My name is Taryn White. I'm the lower school PA rep here, and I have the pleasure of introducing Catherine Graves, our new lower school counselor. And Dave forwarded me her bio, and I can attest to her extensive experience in education and multiple national certifications. She's most recently been pursuing to become a registered play therapist and has an immense passion for the prevention against bullying of children. But what speaks most to me as a mother of two boys here in the lower school is the direct work she's doing with our boys. And my son Ford in 3rd grade has been telling me about a worry creature that they've built in class together. And this is a fuzzy little friend that they've outfitted with eyes and legs, and it's supposed to help them manage their worry in some way. And Mr. Fuzzy, as Ford has named him, lives in his desk, and Ford has built him a house with a rug and a couch, and Ford pulls him out from time to time during the week. And so I think that speaks volumes to the connections that she's already making with our boys here. So I'm really excited to hear about her work today, and if you can help me welcome Catherine.
I'm not a fan of microphones, so I'm going to try to be loud enough to not need it, but I'm also losing my voice. So who am I? I am a native of Richmond. I actually graduated from the Stewart School back in 1998 before it became the school it is today. I married my high school sweetheart, and we have a 1.5-year-old daughter named Greenlee. And I have a Bachelor's of Science in Psychology from VCU, and my Master's of Science is from Radford University in Counseling and Human Development. So this is my 10th year as a school counselor. Back when I graduated back in 2007, there were no jobs in Richmond. There were no jobs in Hanover. There were no jobs anywhere. So I ended up in Spotsylvania County, which for those of you that don't know is a very small, actually it's not that small, it's a very small county in between Fredericksburg and Stafford. So I started as a middle school counselor up there, and I actually got my job up there August 1st and was expected to report for duty August 3rd. So I started as a 7th grade counselor, and then we moved with our students, so I was their 8th grade counselor as well. And then budget cuts came along, and I was the last hired, so I was the first to go. But it actually turned out to be quite a blessing for me because I ended up in the elementary school where I was for 4 years at Salem Elementary. And I grew up with a mother who was an educator. She was a kindergarten teacher. So I've always loved the little kids. And when I became an elementary counselor, it was kind of like I finally found my calling. I knew that counseling was what I wanted to do, but when I started out, I thought I wanted to be a high school counselor. And now looking back, I have no clue how I would be a high school counselor. I'm a very creative person. I'm very hands-on, and I feel like lower school, the elementary age, is really conducive to that passion. So that's a little bit about me. Like I said, this is my 10th year. Before I came here, I was in Chesterfield County for the last 2 years, which I adored, and I would probably still be here had this opportunity not presented itself. But this was just too good to let go. So I do have 2 national certifications, National Certified Counselor and National Certified School Counselor. Basically what that means is I just have a higher code of ethics that I follow, and those certifications are recognized throughout the United States should I ever move anywhere, which I won't. So I love being the lower school counselor here. I am just amazed at how many of you there are this morning. Dave told me there wouldn't be many people, maybe 40. In my experience, I've been lucky to get 3 parents at a parent meeting. So this is just very overwhelming in a good way for me. So this morning I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I kind of envision for this program. I am part-time right now, so the challenge for me, being a proactive person and wanting to have a comprehensive program, it's challenging for me to figure out how to get JK through 5 the way I want it on a part-time basis, but I'm doing my best. Before we start, I wanted to kind of pause and reflect because I know everybody kind of rushed to get here this morning. The weather's kind of dreary, so I just wanted everybody to take a moment to kind of stop, take a deep breath, and I want you to think about back when you were in lower school. Okay? And think about kind of the the worst thing that ever happened to you when you were in lower school. And then think about the best thing that ever happened to you when you were in lower school. And my guess is it was probably easier to think of the worst thing that happened. That kind of popped in your mind first before you thought about the best thing that happened. Because we tend to remember those things that were unpleasant for us. So for me, the first memory that I have back in the early 80s was I was terrified of the school bus. And I couldn't understand why school buses didn't have seatbelts. Because when I was in the car, I had to have a seatbelt. So why did I not have to ride with a seatbelt on the bus? And I remember we actually had a school counselor. It was 86. And it was when they first started having them in elementary schools and public school. And I went to see him, and he was trying to explain to me why they didn't have seatbelts, and I wasn't buying it. So luckily for me, my mother worked at my school, so I didn't actually have to ride the bus. But for me, that's kind of the first experience that I had talking to an adult about a worry that I had. And we didn't have worry creatures back then. But so for me, it was kind of that experience is what I recall first, but then I can remember things like making a potato that looks like a leprechaun and kind of artsy things because I'm more of an artsy person. So the purpose of that is my role here as a counselor is to be your boy's person. You are their parents, but my role is to be their person, their safe person that they can go to if they're having a day that is just not good for them. And my office is located where the chaplain used to be, so down the stairs past the science room. So I'm kind of tucked away for the confidentiality purposes and so that they don't feel like their friends know where they're going and that sort of thing. So I am their person and I'm your person. So, social emotional support. Okay, I was hired for the social emotional health of the boys. What does that mean? Basically, what it means is, if you look at the St. Christopher's Second Century Vision, I highlighted the developing in them the strength of character, wisdom, and life skills, and to make a positive impact. That's what my social emotional piece is all about. The beginning part of that slide, ASCA Mindsets and Behaviors, school counselors have the American School Counselors Association, and they kind of have our guidelines for what it is that we should be doing as school counselors, and they recently changed it to mindsets and behaviors. So there's a set of mindsets that we want children to have, and then there are behaviors that go along with it, and that is what I'm using as kind of my guiding force for coming up with my curriculum here. So today I'm going to give you an overview of the character education class, which right now is with the 3rd grade boys. Classroom lessons that I'm doing in junior kindergarten, kindergarten, 1st and 2nd, and eventually 4th. My small groups, individual counseling, consultation and collaboration, and the parenting resources, which is really what I want to talk to you guys about. So this character education class is a weekly class for 3rd grade right now, and then in mid-January it'll be a weekly class for 5th grade, so I'm alternating with the religion class. Right now you can find a tentative schedule online on the lower school counseling group, which all of you should be a member of. If for some reason you're not, please send me an email and I'll make sure you're added. And on that, on my topics page, I have a topic that has the outline as well as other topics that I'll go over later. But in a nutshell, I'm looking at academic, social, and emotional. And so far with the 3rd grade boys, we've done active listening. We've done growth mindset and multiple intelligences, which is basically teaching the boys that they may not be able to do something now, but they just can't do it yet. So we've been talking about kind of how we can change the way that we think about things and approach things as challenges and see failure and mistakes as learning opportunities. We also talked about perfectionism and failure, and for that lesson I showed them lots of famous athletes and celebrities that failed originally before they became the people they are today. And we did some goal setting, which we're going to be looking at their goals next week actually. And those boys that meet their personal goal, we're going to have a soccer game either right before break or probably after break at this point. We've also talked about empathy, which is more of the social piece. We're right now talking about friendship and inclusion. And then we're going to move into problem solving and conflict resolution and peer pressure. And then on the emotional side, we talked about anxiety, which is where those worry creatures came into play. And we're also going to talk about anger management and some mindfulness. The 5th grade schedule will be posted by the first week of January. And what I've done this year, since I'm new and since this is a new position, I asked the students and I asked the teachers what topics they feel would be most beneficial to their whole class. So I've crafted the lessons that they're getting in character education based on those results, which is why 5th grade will be a little bit different than 3rd grade. So whole class lessons, I'm used to doing weekly or monthly, but with my part-time schedule and the fact that everybody wants me in there from 12:30 to 1, it's not like it used to be for me. So ideally in the future, I'm hoping that that's something that I can do the way that I used to do. But for right now, JK has had an introduction to me, and kindergarten's had the introduction to me, and then they've had active listening. And for those of you that don't know, active listening basically means whole body listening. So it's that they need to be looking at the speaker, their hands and feet need to be still and quiet. They need to have their ears on and listening, and we talk a lot about the difference between hearing and listening. You can hear my voice, but if you're not paying attention, you're not listening to what it is I'm saying. And you can try that at home. We've also done personal space, friendship, self-control, and then I'm hoping to move into cooperation and diversity. And for kindergarten, it's based on the classroom as to which one of those they've had. So I've asked the teachers, which lesson do you feel will be most beneficial to your boys right now? So some of them had personal space, some of them had friendship, all of them had self-control and active listening. And you'll notice a theme of self-control on here. 1st grade, they've had active listening, they've had self-control, and they've had self-control again. And today they're going to have self-control a 3rd time. So, and then self-regulation. For 2nd grade, we're doing bucket filling. So you might hear your boys come home and talk about this bucket. And basically bucket filling is treating everybody with kindness. It's kind of the golden rule. And I'm going to base all of their lessons around that idea of bucket filling and kindness. So they've all made a paper bucket that I'm attaching a pocket to the back of, and when I go into their classrooms, I'm going to take it with us, and whatever it is we talk about in that lesson, we're going to have a little reminder that goes into our bucket. I'm also working with the teachers on some other ideas of how we can use bucket filling in their classroom. At my previous schools, I've had classroom buckets in there, and we've had kind of a star of the week, and they've said nice things about that person, and then that person takes a poster home at the end of the week that had all of those compliments on it. And then they also wanted empathy, friendship, manners, and self-control. 4th grade, I have not gotten into yet, but I'm hoping to do responsibility, study skills, empathy and perspective, friendship, conflict resolution, anxiety, and self-confidence. And those are all things that the teachers had asked for. Small groups are usually a group of 4 to 6 boys that meet 6 to 8 times. And the topics are based on need or interest. So right now I'm running 2 self-regulation groups for kindergarten and 1st grade. And after Christmas break, I'm hoping to start some new groups. Mindfulness is one group that I've done in the past, and I'll talk a little bit more about what that is. Worry and anxiety, I did a Worry Busters group that I feel like might be really beneficial for some boys. Friendship groups, self-confidence groups, grief and loss. I actually worked for Full Circle Grief Center, which is down Patterson Avenue, for a year. I did school groups for them in the Richmond Public Schools, and then I did a perinatal loss sibling group, so the siblings of the children, which was really awesome. That particular group, my youngest was 3, and my oldest was 11. So that was a fun group to do, to try to developmentally come up with something. Changing families, so divorce, separation, or new sibling, or just merging of families is something that I often do in small groups. Anger management. And then the multi-topic group, there's a curriculum called Operation Breaking the Boy Code, and there's also an Operation Breaking the Girl Code. And it's kind of a hodgepodge of things, but it's geared towards making them their best selves. And groups usually meet during non-instructional times, so either lunch or some other time that I can get them. And they're usually a half hour long. Individual counseling. My sessions last approximately 20 minutes. I am not here as a therapist, so you're not going to get your 60 to 90 minute session sitting on my couch. I do have a couch. But I'm more of a, especially with boys, I'm more of less talk, more play. As she mentioned, I do aspire to be a registered play therapist. I have all of the education components for that, but in Virginia, you have to be a licensed professional counselor before you can be registered as a play therapist, which requires 4,000 hours of supervision, and I only have 600 right now. So that's kind of my long-term goal. The purpose of individual counseling with me is to provide a safe space where they feel heard and where they can express their concerns. And then I teach them strategies and they practice them with me. And then I will let you know what we've worked on so you can work on it at home. And sometimes, depending on what it is, if it's like a friendship kind of thing, after we practice, then sometimes we'll have an invitable way to come and we can practice those skills in that smaller setting. I consult with Dr. Twenty and other counselors as needed. And referrals to outside agencies or providers if I feel like more intense counseling might be beneficial, or if you feel like more intense counseling might be beneficial. I have the confidentiality piece on here because in schools it's a little bit different than in private practice. ASCO that I mentioned earlier, their ethical standards say that school counselors recognize their primary ethical obligation for confidentiality is to the students, but balance that obligation with an understanding of parents and guardians' legal and inherent rights to be the guiding force in their children's lives. So basically, confidentiality for me is what they say in my office stays in my office unless they're going to hurt themselves or hurt someone else or someone has hurt them. So kind of that duty to warn sort of thing. Having said that, I am happy to let you know what it is that we talked about in a general way, but if they ask, if they say something specific to me that they want to just be with me for that confidentiality and building that trust with them, if it's not something that's going to hurt them, that's something I would tend to keep confidential. Consultation and collaboration. I attend parent-teacher conferences and I attend the weekly resource meetings. I'm also available to collaborate with teachers for strategies for the boys to use for any concerns that teachers may have, and the same for you all. And I'm just kind of a sounding board for students and parents and staff. I'm kind of everybody's counselor. So, the parent resources are something that I'm really excited about. I have a page on SaintsNet. It's called Lower School Counseling. And it's going to be updated with articles and resources and websites, and I've got some book lists up there for you all. And it's constantly in progress, so I update it whenever I get something new or as often as I can, and I do plan to add more over Christmas break. With a 1.5-year-old, I have to do it when I can or when she's napping. So currently, it has information on some holiday resources, which I'm continuing to update. Mindfulness. Current events would be kind of the outcome of the election, and how to talk to your boys about that. Anxiety, anger management, attention. My book list, I have a section of book lists that have all of them, and then I also have the book list in whichever category it goes with. So my anxiety book list would be under book lists and also under anxiety. I have that character education class outline, and like I said, in January you'll find the 5th grade one as well. I have resources on empathy and perspective, grief and loss, a section about me that's kind of what I told you about. It has a picture though. Motivation, perfectionism, self-control, and just some general parenting resources. So some developmental things, articles that I found interesting, that sort of thing. If there's any topic that I don't have up yet, but you feel like it's something you really, really need, please send me an email and I will get it to you or post it on there for the greater good of everyone. I do have a couple of books that I really, really love that I use myself as a parent that I did want to mention today. So the first one is called Raising Your Spirited Child. There's lots of versions. It looks like this. If you have a boy that maybe has been diagnosed with ADHD, maybe they haven't been diagnosed with ADHD, they just seem a little more intense than maybe other boys or your other children. This book is a must-read, and they have a workbook too. I actually recommend this book to my best friends. My very best friend got it a couple of years back and got the workbook with her first child and worked through it, and she said it really did kind of change the way she worked with her daughter and made quite a difference. So this is a great read. Parenting with Love and Logic. I don't have the book on me today, but the Love and Logic website has all kinds of parenting resources. We used it extensively when I was in Spotsylvania County, and that particular book kind of helps you reframe how you talk to your child in terms of discipline in a way that they're going to hear you better and kind of comply better. Right now, with my 1.5-year-old, she has discovered the word no. Everything is no. And she has the head nod too. The no. And I go, yes. She goes, no. So that particular book is something that my husband and I use, which it's been kind of, there's some language in there that is kind of hard for my husband to remember at times. But it is a really great book, and it's a really great website as well. And then the mindfulness. So you will hear mindfulness coming up. It's kind of the hot topic, the trend right now. For me, I came across mindfulness with the Hawn Foundation. So Goldie Hawn, the actress, created this foundation a while back. And she got together with some educators and some neuropsychologists and just this whole team of people, and she came up with this curriculum called the Mind Up Curriculum. So there's a Mind Up curriculum for JK through 2, there's one for 3 through 5, and there's one for 6 through 8. And basically what it does is it looks at mindfulness in terms of the brain. So the first lessons are about how your brain is structured, the science of your brain and how it works. And then once they understand that, then you move into more of the being in the present moment, deep breathing, being mindful about what it is we're doing. And they found that when they've implemented this in schools, there's 15 lessons in there, but they found that students have had less anxiety, they've had less stress, they've performed better academically, they've gotten along better socially. So it's kind of something that's my newest near and dear to my heart that I'm hoping to incorporate long-term here at St. Christopher's. I've also talked to Sashi Valentine, who is the middle and upper school counselor, and Dr. Van, and they're kind of also interested in it as I am. So it's something that we're looking at. It's not something that we've implemented yet, but it's something that we are hoping to implement just because we've had research and we've seen that it does work. But for you all, she has this book, 10 Mindful Minutes, and the beginning of it kind of talks about her program, and it's kind of, this is why my program's great. But then it does have things that you can actually use for yourself and for your children. So those are kind of my top 3 right now. And I don't ever recommend a book if I haven't read it or used it. For your boys, I have 3 that I really, really love that I wanted to share with you today. One is called The 7 Habits of Happy Kids. So a long time ago, Sean Covey wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Some of you may have read that. And his son decided that it needed to be translated into something for children. So he came up with these characters, and he wrote the seven Habits of Happy Kids. There are schools, there's a wonderful school down in North Carolina, A.B. Combs, and they're a Leader in Me school. And what Leader in Me schools do is they kind of empower the students to be the leaders of the school. And my previous school, Clover Hill Elementary, we weren't an official Leader in Me school, but we had the components of it. So we had service learning cabinets, and the students were the leaders in that cabinet, and there were 7 of them, which go along with 7 habits. And it was just amazing. I mean, those students still amaze me today. I followed them on Facebook. And they kind of take charge of everything, and it helps to kind of prepare them for that global society and being leaders. And it also kind of ties into mindfulness a little bit, because the first one is to be proactive, and the last habit is called Sharpen the Saw, which is about having balance in your life. So they do have a website, theleaderinme.org. The bucket filling, Have You Filled a Bucket Today, is the original book. There are so many books since that book was written, but that's the one that I would recommend starting with. And they have a great website, bucketfillers101.com, that I've used for years. And then Howard B. Wigglebottom. Does anybody know about Howard B. Wigglebottom? So Howard B. Wigglebottom, your boys will love. He's a bunny rabbit that has a really hard time. And I've already read a couple of his books in kindergarten and first. So the good thing for me, for Howard B. Wigglebottom, is they have a website, wedolisten.org, and on the website they have all of the books animated. So technically you don't have to buy the book. You can have your son go to the website and bring it up, and it has Howard's voice, and it's just so much better than anything I could do. But I do have the Howard B. Wigglebottom books as well. So he looks at things like listening, sportsmanship, honesty, divorce, grief. There's so many, I can't keep up because there's just so many of them now. But those are 3 things that I highly recommend for the boys and for you all. So kind of my long-term vision for this role is to do whole class lessons, JK through 2nd and 4th, on a monthly basis. I'm not sure if that will happen this year, but I definitely want it to happen next year. I hope to have more small groups on social, emotional, or behavioral topics for the lower grades, and I'd really like to do a book study with the upper grades. There's lots of character education type books that some of my colleagues have used, where they, as part of their group, they do this book study. So they read a chapter of the book, and then it ties into empathy or friendship or whatever the topic of the group is. I'd also like to have a lending library of resources for you all and for the students. And then I'd like to have a book club for parents and maybe a book talk based on that book. So my goal right now is to do one this spring and then hopefully do more in future years. And I'm going to see if some of the other schools might want to collaborate on that. And to cultivate a culture of mindfulness for everyone, for the boys, for the staff, and for the parents. Because if we're more present, we're happier. And we're more attuned to what our children are doing because they grow up so fast. I can't believe my daughter is 1.5 years. So, this is kind of a precious time for them. It's a precious time for us. And I just thank you so much for letting me have this opportunity to work with your precious boys. So, I have my business cards if you'd like to take one. And I am here, since I'm part-time, I'm here until 1 o'clock, Monday through Thursday, and then I'm here on Friday mornings until 11. And as I said earlier, if there's a topic you'd like more resources on, please email me and I'll be happy to add it as soon as possible. So, if there are any questions? Yes, ma'am.
How is it determined, that small group that's 4 to 6 boys, how is it determined who attends that?
Thank you for asking that. So that is by teacher referral or parent referral. And what I'm going to do for after Christmas break, I will send out information on possible groups that might be forming. But if you know that there is a group that your son needs that you would like him to be part of, if you want to just go ahead and email me or send me a note, I'll go ahead and just start compiling a list, because once I have the 4 to 6 boys, then I can create the group.
Can I piggyback off that for 1 second? Catherine had mentioned the weekly resource team meetings. And just to help explain a little bit more about what that means, the resource team, of which we are both part of, Lisa Snyder, a number of reading specialists, so there's sort of an academic component to that, and there's also the social-emotional side of the house. And Catherine takes the lead role, as you can imagine, on the social-emotional side of the house. So let's say there's a homeroom teacher who's in the trenches with the child, and they're just perplexed by something. And it could be academic, could be social-emotional, could be behavioral. What that teacher will do is obviously exhaust everything that they can do to support the child. But let's say they're feeling like they've done a bunch of things and they've probably communicated with the parents, but they're just feeling like the growth isn't quite what they would hope that it would be. That's when they will often, sometimes informally, come to people like Catherine or the resource team, just say, gosh, I'm really perplexed by this. These are some of the things I've tried. I'm not really sure what to do. We can make some informal suggestions. But then if we still feel, if that teacher still feels like, this isn't quite, I'm worried about this, then what the teacher will do is complete what we call a referral. And that basically is a formal, that sort of kicks it into a more formal mode, where the teacher has to articulate what they've done, share that with the resource team, and then collectively we basically sit around and we consider action steps to support the child. As you can imagine, many of the social, emotional, behavioral things get kicked over to Catherine, working with the teachers and the parents. You did mention Dr. Twenty. Stephen Twenty is our school psychologist, so we do have, I feel very lucky that, I never feel alone when it comes to, in some cases, some difficult situations. But we have Catherine in-house, but then we also do have a school psychologist on hand if we feel like we need to turn it up a notch. And so that, I think, just hopefully explains a little bit more kind of in the trenches how that might unfold. And so that's where, so I'm not sure who asked the question, but so let's say there's a teacher who says, gosh, the self-regulation piece is something that I'm worried about in my class. That could be generated from the teacher, but also some of those things could be generated from a concerned parent too. Helpful?
Any other questions? All right. If you have a question or something that you'd like to talk about with me privately, I will be available, and my business cards are up here if you'd like to grab one. Thank you very much for coming in this morning.